Imagine buying a house and moving in with your 3 children, completely unaware that someone else was already living there. And I'm not talking about a human being. After losing her husband to blood cancer, this woman was left to raise her 3 children alone. Now, her youngest child was just 6 months old. Her second child was 2 years, while the eldest was just 8. For several months, this woman suffered with grief, but eventually, she decided that it was time for a fresh start. Using the money her late husband had left behind, she bought a modest house. Mind you, it wasn't luxurious, but it belonged to them. For the first month since she lost her husband, she felt hopeful. She and her children moved in. For several weeks, everything seemed perfectly normal. Then, the strange things began. One night, her 8-year-old daughter was peacefully sleeping alone in her room when her eyes suddenly snapped open. She had been awakened by the sound of laughter. But what made her blood run cold was that the laughter wasn't coming from outside her room. It was coming from inside the walls. So, one afternoon, the daughter casually walked into the living room and asked her, "Mommy, who keeps laughing inside the wall?" She looked up from what she was doing. "What wall?" "Mommy, the one beside my room. The people inside keep laughing." She smiled and told her daughter, "There are no people inside the wall. Walls doesn't laugh." And the daughter simply nodded and walked away. The next day, her daughter mentioned the same thing. She complained she couldn't get a proper sleep because of it, and she always described the same thing. Soft voices, quiet laughter. Sometimes it sounded like adults talking. Other times it sounded like children giggling. This woman assumed her daughter had a vivid imagination and stopped paying attention to her. Not long afterwards, her 2-year-old son developed a strange habit. Whenever he entered certain parts of the house, he would stop and then he would start looking at the ceiling, pointing at it or pointing at the wall. His eyes followed something that seemed to be moving. Sometimes he smiles. Sometimes he simply kept pointing at it as though he wanted his mother to also notice it as well. Since he couldn't speak properly, he never explained what he was looking at. And whenever she turned to look, she saw absolutely nothing. She laughed it off. Children point at random things all the time, or so she thought. Then the night changed. One night, she woke up after hearing the sound of a baby laughing. Not crying, laughing. Gentle little giggles echoed through the silent house. She immediately recognized the voice. It was the laughter of her 6-month-old son, and it was coming from his nursery. The baby was awake inside his crib, staring at an empty corner of the room while laughing happily, stretching out his arms to whoever he was laughing with. It was as though someone was standing there making funny faces at the baby. The woman searched around the room. Nobody was there. For the second time again, she convinced herself babies laugh in their sleep. And the following night, it happened again. The same laughter, almost at the same time. She rushed to the nursery, and as soon as she opened the door, she stopped in her tracks. The baby crib was empty. She looked by the side, and there he was. Her 6-month-old son was beside the crib, on the floor, playing happily with something she couldn't see. She stood there in disbelief. The crib rail were far too high. A baby that age couldn't climb over it. He couldn't lower himself down. He shouldn't even get out of it. Yet, there he was, playing happily, as if nothing unusual had happened. Without wasting a second, she picked him up and carried him to her room. From that night onward, he never slept in the nursery again. Days turned into weeks. This woman began falling sick. First, it was ordinary tiredness. Then, it became constant headaches, and then overwhelming exhaustion. out of nowhere. Hospital visits and medications changed nothing. She only became weaker. Around the same time, she started having the exact same dream every single night. Someone would knock on her front door. 3 knocks. She would walk over and open the door. Standing outside was a horrifying looking creature. It never blinked and it doesn't say anything to her. It only stands in front of her door, smiling at her. In every dream, she would summon the courage and ask, "What do you want from my house?" The instant she said those words, the smile would vanish. Instantly, it would get very angry, and all of a sudden, it will lunge towards the doorway, trying to force itself inside the house. She always woke up at that exact moment, sweating heavily. Night after night, the same dream, nothing changed. Then, another problem appeared. A terrible smell, an unbearable one. The entire house began smelling like a decomposing corpse. The odor became very unbearable to the extent that she had to call plumbers. She was convinced that a dead animal or a broken sewage was hidden beneath the house. Several plumbers came to inspect it. None of them found anything. In fact, the smell became so unbearable that they couldn't last inside the house for even 10 minutes before walking outside. As her health continued getting worse, the dream also changed. Now, each time the creature appeared, it no longer remained outside peacefully. It pushes hard against the doorway. It doesn't even wait for her to ask what it wants. Every night, every single time it appears, it seemed determined to force its way into the house. And that was when she finally admitted to something she has been denying all this while. There was something wrong with the house. Either the creature belonged to it, or it simply doesn't want anyone living there. She just couldn't explain it. But she knew one thing. She had 3 children depending on her. And she wasn't going to sit still waiting around for something worse to happen. She packed their belongings and moved into a close relative's house. That very first night after leaving, she had one final dream. She saw herself driving away from the house with her 3 children. Now, standing outside that same house she was driving away from was that horrifying creature. But this time, it wasn't chasing them. It wasn't angry. It simply stood there, looking at them, smiling. Then, it slowly raised up one hand and waved goodbye to them. And immediately, she woke up from the dream. From that night onward, the nightmare never returned again. The mysterious laughter disappeared. Even the terrible smell vanished. Her health gradually improved, like everything stopped the moment she left that house. Months later, she sold the property. She never stepped her foot inside that house again. Then, she rented another apartment and moved in with her children. And to this day, nothing strange has ever happened again.